Good Thursday morning, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com mailbag podcast. Glad to have you along on this Thursday morning. Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, Austin Price. For some reason, Eric Kane doesn't think he can do a podcast today, so he's not going to be with us. But he's a little bit busy with his growing family. So we'll get Eric back in the fold here in a few days. But glad to have you along with us on the mailbag podcast on this Thursday morning. And guys, before we get to the mailbag questions, I want to ask you guys one question. Heather Dench had this in an ESPN story when I was reading, I guess, Wednesday night, the story. Ross Bork, the AD at Ohio State, talking about calendar changes. And he was talking about how in the playoff system, like his team was under the 20-hour rule. Texas was not under the 20-hour rule. And there's some things wrong there. But then he also talked about the transfer portal. And his recommendation, based on the fact that Rev share contracts with schools, he believes is going to go June to June, essentially. That the portal window should be a 10-day window in the month of May for all fall sports. Yay or nay?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like the whole two portal windows, all that stuff's insane. Like it's killing the sport, and it's making fans. Don't get me wrong, the product on the field has not suffered. It's been great, right? But like the fans, man, like they just like they're asked to do this or asked to do that, and then it's hard to have real investment. They're asking you to invest, financially, but then the investment emotionally, just it's a kick to the groin when like these guys can come and go, and the emotional roller coaster of fans and having to watch this from their teams. It just I think to kind of lessen some of that, you've got to go with what he's recommended or something like that. Eliminate the one in the spring, go with just one window.
Yeah, Rob, I think everybody agrees it needs to have one window. I think the question becomes, if you do a May window, does that reduce the number of transfers, which everybody's looking for?
I would say no.
Well, I mean, can guys get ready in a short period of time to play? Because coaches like the whole winter workouts, spring practice, build your relationship with your team. You know who your roster is versus you get to May and maybe you lose 20 guys and you've got to completely change your roster over. I think we all agree, Rob, one transfer portal window is the way to go. The question is, when do you do it? Is May better than December? I'll ask it that way to you.
Well, I mean, it would be if it wasn't, but I think you also have to get rid of the kind of archaic rules like, a coach can't be out on the practice field with a football and 11 guys. I mean, that's when you're paying the quarterback $4 million a year, that's stupid.
I agree with that.
I mean, that's dumb that you can't, the month of June, you can't be out there, God forbid, with a whistle and your position group. I mean, that needs to grow up. But the transfer portal, I mean, it's crazy to think, but college football is more mercenary than NFL football now, if you're a fan. I mean, you can literally lock into a guy that's signed to a long-term deal and root for that quarterback or wide receiver or defensive end for 4 years. And you can't do that in college football right now, which is crazy.
That's a hell of a way to put it.
It is.
I've never thought of it in that terms, but you're exactly right. I mean, that's 100% correct. When
in some ways you can't lock in for 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky to get it out for 4 months, right? Maybe. I mean, so
you could have bought 3 different Tyler Barron jerseys last year.
Yeah, and within a month. I mean, and it's crazy to think that. But you're exactly right, Rob.
And still got the Ole Miss Tyler Barron Christmas ornament when he was there for like 2 weeks.
That'd be a great gag gift down the road.
White elephant for Christmas. Yeah. All right, let's get to the mailbag question. I just wanted to ask you guys that off the top. Now let's get into the questions that everybody submitted this week, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. We'll start with RedBeardVFL. Had Tennessee gotten Aguilar straight from App State, do you think people would be more ecstatic about him, Austin Price?
I think that's the case. That was kind of suggested on the board on Wednesday on Tuesday. And, I think that's very accurate. In fact, somebody from campus called me and they're like, what's the reaction been like out there? And I said, well, it's not been the best because, I mean, like people feel like that, Tennessee's getting just like the leftovers of UCLA. Like, I mean, like, well, they didn't want him because they're taking Nico, but that's all we could get, and that's how they kind of felt. Right. And the truth is like, had he just come from Appalachian State and not been at UCLA where Tennessee's old quarterback just went, this probably has a different feel to it, because Tennessee fans would have been excited about the South Alabama kid. Not like, he's, just unbelievable. I mean, a good player, but I mean, like, you don't know anymore that he's proven at South Alabama that what, Joey Aguilar's done at Appalachian State the 2 previous years. So yeah, I agree with that notion wholeheartedly. It's kind of how it all went down versus actually who you're getting.
Well, I think the other thing too, for me, is this narrative that it's a trade, right?
Yes,
Like you traded.
feels
So
that way though.
right. I mean, yeah, but because you're selling it as a trade, and you've traded for a guy who started in the SEC for a guy who hasn't started in the SEC, the language trade gives it like it was both sides said, hey, I want to get rid of my guy, let's swap these guys. And that's not how it worked, but I think that changes the perception a little bit of it as well. But that's my thought there. We got a couple of questions here I'm going to merge together, talking about general managers. So DavyVol, shout out to you for the question, and CompetitionOrange has a question. They're kind of together. Do you think Josh Heupel will ever consider hiring a GM, and should he? And can you compare how UT's overall scouting and player personnel operations compare to other SEC schools, with roster building becoming more and more complicated, and should those areas be enhanced? So 2-part question. Rob, I'll start with you. GM, does everybody need to have a GM in college football these days?
I mean, I kind of think they do. I mean, you guys know this better than me, but I mean, doesn't Tennessee kind of have one? It just doesn't have a title. I mean, is that fair to say? I mean, would you call Scott Altizer sort of that, what people would call a general manager?
I think they have. I think they have a collection of people that have been involved.
That's probably better, like an umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that there's been multiple people involved in there. I think
it's not like somebody's not doing that job, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I know
somebody doesn't have that title.
I don't think it's nobody's going to a press conference like Ron Rivera did this week.
Yeah, that's
as the GM. So the question becomes, Austin, do you think that it has to become that one more high profile guy that people would know and recognize, like what Oklahoma did in hiring Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl, or hiring a former NFL front office person like we've seen some people do? I think that's the question fans have when you look at where this is right now.
Yeah, I think that it's a copycat game. And so the fact that everybody else has kind of went there, Tennessee's kind of been reluctant to do that. Do I think that had they had a GM, this whole Nico thing would have been handled differently? I do not believe so.
I mean, would Josh still be the guy, like when the buck stops here on his desk?
Yeah,
I mean,
it should be, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I think.
Let's go out and hire a GM for $1 million. Okay, $1 million. Alabama's paying what, $800,000. We're gonna go 200 above that. We're just throwing out just for fun, right? We're just playing, fake Danny White here is what we're doing. We'll hire a GM for $1 million. Who makes the decision? The $1 million guy or the $9 million?
Yeah, that's exactly.
I mean that's So I mean, like, it still ends with Josh, or it should. Now again, should he have somebody there that can kind of help navigate and go, is that a good idea? Is that a good idea? I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, like, I think that a lot of it depends on kind of how you look at it. But I mean, hey guys, Peyton Manning's been rumored for every other job at Tennessee over the years: janitor, offense coordinator, head coach,
quarterbacks coach. AP, come on,
GM in there. I mean, I've not seen that yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, just throw that one in there. I think for me, the bigger thing, you can structure it however you want to structure it when you look at it, Austin. But for me, I think the biggest thing is, I think your organization. I mean, you have to be organized. Whether you got co-GMs, you don't have somebody with a title, you got 3 people do this. I mean, there are 78,000, something like that, 76,000 college football players. All of them aren't going in the portal, but about 2,000 or 3,000.
73,206.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch. I mean, like, you have to stay on top of everything. So your organization has to be good, and you have to have dedicated things. Like, you can't ask one person to do all of it. Okay, now you maybe need one person to be the gatekeeper. If your head coach is not willing to do that, then yeah, you got to have a GM. But to me, it's about the people underneath, like who's getting the early scouting done. So when a guy's rumored to go in the portal, hey, this is a guy we're interested in. Third-party conversations, right? Like, I mean, you can't wait until a bunch of people are out there publicly that they're leaving and then start to figure out if you like the guy or not. And I'm not saying Tennessee's late to the party. I'm just saying as this grows, Austin, you have to be more organized than you've ever had to be in roster management.
Well, let's go.
And that involves more people.
Well, let's call it what it is. I mean, you have to do what everybody else is doing, which is, as you just suggested, be out there beating the bushes behind the scenes before things actually happen. Because you can't. It's like you have to anticipate, right? Like you can't say, well, the receiver's going to be here, so I'm going to throw it there, and you got to anticipate throwing it there, And so, I agreed. I think that this is again, they have to. There's little tweaks they have to do to continue to be good, and I think that Tennessee's always been at the forefront of a lot of this NIL stuff. But again, the game's constantly evolving, constantly changing, and you have to constantly evolve and constantly change with it.
Yep. All right. Go ahead.
Say, I mean, if Josh went that way, I don't think that it would be somebody that was, talking at press conferences.
Right.
What do you guys think? I mean,
yeah, I was surprised to see the Ron Rivera press conference with breaking down what they lost in the transfer portal, like discuss the running back position at Cal. Like that seems. I think your head coach is going to be the guy at the podium when he discusses his roster. I think. To me, that was a surprise. I mean, is Jim Nagy going to do a bunch of press conferences for?
Yeah,
he's done what, one?
I think he's done multiple media opportunities.
Okay, so I don't know. I mean, I just see that seems, and maybe that's where it goes. All this is new, but that seems a little bit, a bit odd. That okay, if you have a roster question, you need to ask the general manager. Don't ask the head coach, who's the highest paid person in your university system. But maybe that's where we ultimately get to. All right, NIL's on the mind of several people here, so I've kind of merged some of these together too. So this is the ADaug, and everything rhymes with Orange 14, and TMini wants to know how are NIL deals typically structured in terms of payment, signing bonuses, paper month, ? How can schools like Arkansas avoid getting scammed by the situation that they're having to deal with there with Madden? What's preventing schools from including clauses in NIL deals to protect themselves from potential issues? And now that the chaos is all over the place, is there any way to settle all of this stuff down? So let's break that down, Austin, best we can. Every NIL deal is kind of done differently, right? Like there's some standards, but everybody's, depending on what state you're from, depending on how school wants to do it, there's not a unified across the board. Every contract is done the same way in NIL, correct?
That's correct. And the kids are paid monthly. At least they are at Tennessee. And, the last year and a half, maybe even close to 2 years, everyone has started to work in these clauses where, like, if you leave, then you have to pay back money, right? Like it, not, and it's not that way for everybody, but like your upper echelon guys. There was an SEC school had a kid back in the winter portal go to another SEC school, and that school went and was like, you have to pay us because the way it was all structured. And the other SEC school, ended up paying the buyout for the kid, right? And so again, it depends on. It's basically like you're not going to have a buyout if you're like the second string safety, but like if you're like a dude, then you absolutely have those type things worked into deals.
And so that's something that was not there initially.
Correct.
Correct. This is something that's developed here over the last portal cycle or two that people are looking at not portal cycle, but signing class and portal cycle or two. People are looking at doing that for some kind of protection. I don't think any of us have any idea how the Arkansas deal was written for Nico. So or for Matt, yes. I don't have any idea what they can or can't do. I know obviously they're upset publicly, have said they support whatever the collective elects to do if they try to go back after it. Again, TMini wanted to know, now that the chaos is being talked about all over the place, are there any rumors of any traction from different factions to try to rein some of this mess back in, like contract for big target players or even new laws limiting transfer options? We talked a little bit about transfer portal over the top. I mean, there are contracts, right, Rob? I mean, those are already out there. It's
there's a lot of wishful thinking.
Yeah.
But there's no traction that like he's asking. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that are.
Everybody's got great ideas.
Yeah, well, I mean, that toothpaste is out of the tube. It's hard to squeeze that toothpaste back in the tube because here's what we know. I mean, lawsuits are rampant, right? I mean, everybody's gonna protect themselves and use the law and use the courts to try to do that if they can. So I don't think it's ever going back. You know, do you put some kind of parameters moving forward with rev share that maybe changes some things? I mean, perhaps, but there's not a court in the land that's going to tell someone they can't go out and make money.
Nope.
It's just not going to happen. And that's how we've got to this point anyways, because the court said, I'm not going to put a restriction on how much an 18-year-old kid can make. We're not going to do that. So that's, I mean, to me, that's where that is at. All right, let's move on to some others here. Imissdenariusmoore. Who do you think it was the most successful, quote, next man up in UT history? Is it Lanier filling Dalton Knecht's shoes, T. Martin's junior year? Who's the next man up that you think of when you think of that? I thought it's kind of a fun question to think about. I don't think it's fair to say. I mean, obviously T did what they needed him to do in '98. He got better throughout the deal. There was clearly a difference in what they were offensively from Peyton Manning, but T went and got it job. He got it done. He had a lot of help around him. Lanier Knecht is kind of interesting, Rob.
Man, I give Josh Dobbs. I don't think anybody saw that coming. I mean, Mike Majaki didn't want to play him.
Yeah.
I mean, I just remember, I mean, that came out of nowhere. The fact that he was a first team all SEC quarterback.
And he was the last guy they tried to start that year. I mean, basically,
I remember that spring game. I mean, spring games don't mean anything, but
right.
I mean, it meant something to Dobbs that year. I mean, he threw for like 400 yards and a couple of quarters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couldn't you go with any running back in the '90s? Basically, like when Jay took over for the little man, or like Travis Henry took over. Travis Stevens took over for Travis Henry. Like, I mean, you could go like every running back for like about.
Well, I think the ultimate in the run. You're right. The ultimate in the running back room for me would be what Tony Thompson did after the injury to Chuck Webb, and obviously he took over there. He was kind of an afterthought that jumped in and was thrown into the fire and took off there. So. Yeah, that's definitely a good one. He also wanted to know, what is something you wish you didn't have to keep explaining to people on the message board?
If he just can't narrow it down to 20.
I'll give you mine. I thought of this one. I'll give you mine. I have to keep explaining that one loss in basketball does not end the season in the middle of January or December. It's not the end of the world. Same for baseball. When you lose a conference game in April, that doesn't mean your season is over, because I think everybody struggles to shift out of the football mentality. Not everybody, but some struggle to shift out of the football mentality that one loss is such a great detriment. When you lose a basketball game in December, your season is not – it's not of the detriment that some people want to make it out to be.
With the playoff now, one loss in football doesn't hurt you.
It doesn't hurt you as bad, for sure. I mean – but I mean, it has an effect. I mean, one loss to Arkansas cost you a home playoff game. But losing when you play 30 basketball games, losing one in December probably doesn't knock you out of the 1 seed or the 2 seed or a 3 seed.
Losing one in the last weekend in March,
yeah,
doesn't knock you out.
Yeah, that's true. Joey Freshwater wants to know, what's the level of concern with the wide receiver room? Why hasn't this staff been more aggressive in trying to bring guys in? What's the reason for the mass exodus of that room this past winter, Austin?
Well, the mass exodus, Chaz Nimrod wanted to play more. Caleb Webb wanted to play more. Those guys played the year before, remember, with all the injuries, and they were the ones out there for the Cheese at Citrus Bowl, right? And all of a sudden they were back behind Brew and Dante and Squirrel and all that. So they wanted to leave. Obviously, Caleb Webb was disgruntled. I mean, that guy can't stay off Twitter. He's like the angry man. But Squirrel, he just wanted to go and change of venues. Like Tennessee didn't know that he was going to leave, but the other ones they knew were an option. Pretty much, from October on, they would have welcomed any of them back, but they also understood that they wanted to go. Laycock just wasn't going to factor here. That was a miss, and he's now been in the portal again after leaving and going to Purdue. And so I don't know why they haven't been as aggressive. Now, some of those guys left a little bit later, and some of the guys like Barryon Brown and Dane Key, I am 98% positive they were already locked in with their schools, LSU and Nebraska, before Tennessee lost Squirrel. And that's when things kind of got shifted. Losing one or two guys is pretty normal, but when you lose one of the guys that's a starter, it makes it a little different. And so, but at the same time, they really like Braylon Staley. They really like Mike Matthews. There's just a lot of unknown in that room. And so, to me, they've got to add somebody. I don't know who that's going to be. Obviously, they got the BYU kid coming in this weekend. But outside of that, the San Jose State kid went to Louisville. They've got to add somebody. But, there's just a lot of unknown in that room. I don't think that's a bad thing. There was a lot of unknown in the secondary a year ago, and that worked out pretty well because you got some new blood in there, and those guys flourished. Can that happen to receiver? I think absolutely. And I don't think you can bring in two, as I've given this my filibuster answer here. I don't think you can bring in two because then it sunks Bradarius Jackson, Travis Smith, Joakim Dotson. Two of those were here in spring practice, and everybody saw what they could do and felt like they could really contribute this fall.
Yeah. All right. Athrun's got his list of questions here. We'll run through them right here. Do you think this team will view this season the way the 98 team viewed that season? View is not just a quarterback. Listen, we're in a total different era. Okay. The 98 team, nobody left. That team, nobody left other than the seniors. You didn't bring in five new. I mean, it's a total different world and where you're at from a team concept standpoint. Leadership. I don't think those comparisons are any kind of fair comparison. Rob, is there any sort of comparison to a former player you could make with Nate Ament?
Man, not a Tennessee player. I don't think. And man, I don't want to go crazy and say he's Kevin Durant, but I mean, just think about 6'9", 6'10" dudes that can put the ball on the floor and shoot. I mean, I don't think there's been a Tennessee player his height with his skill set offensively. And again, I'm really pumping the brakes on what to expect or saying he's going to average 20 or whatever, but I just don't know what he's going to be as an 18-year-old freshman. I mean, 5 years from now, he'll probably be an NBA All-Star. I mean, I'll tell you what I would compare him to is a 6'9" Allen Houston. That's what I would go with.
Oh, okay. That good of a shooter?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's.
At 18 years old now. I mean, not like
sure. Yeah, not New York Nick, not New York
Allen
Nick.
Houston on the Olympic team.
Okay, yeah, fair.
Who's the Corey Allen of this team?
The great Corey Allen, ladies and gentlemen. One of the favorite Vols. Austin, are there any portal entries from the Tennessee side that hurt in your opinion? When you talk about Christian Charles, Larry Johnson, John Slaughter, the three that have left to this point?
I think Larry hurts just from a depth standpoint. He had come a long way. Staff didn't want to lose him, but at the same time, what he was wanting to make an NIL and the fact he was, wanting to be, guaranteed to be the guy at right tackle just wasn't going to happen. And so, it stings. But now it's on the offensive line coach. Glenn Ellerby has to go out and he's got to get Bennett Warren ready. He's got to get Jesse Perry ready. Those guys, as Jesse Perry becomes, to me, Jesse Perry is really the ultimate swing guy here. He's going to be the Dane Davis of this offensive line, so to speak. Oh, they need a center. Okay, that's potential. Oh, they need a guard or they need a tackle. All things that I think, he's going to be able to do. So, that one to me stings the most. Christian Charles hadn't been able to stay healthy enough. If he had stayed healthy, it'd be different, but he just never could stay healthy. So it's hard for me to look at that and go, wow, that one hurts.
So now we'll move on to iHeartVols. Who was least popular with the fan base? Lane Kiffin on the night of Guys It's True, Bruce Pearl the day he accepted the Auburn job, John Curry on Shiano Sunday, or Big Nick today? I'm taking Bruce out of the equation because he's been gone from Tennessee. He's a non-factor.
Yeah, he's not on that list.
I'd
probably go Curry.
I think
Lane.
Lane?
Was Lane like? Were the fans mad at Lane, or were they hurt?
Hurt. I agree with that.
They were mad at Curry, right? Because they're trying to bring this guy in, right? I think they were more hurt over Lane leaving because they were all in on Lane. He was so different. They were all in, and how could he lose him? How could Mike Hamilton let this happen? I think it was more hurt there, more anger with John Curry.
Yeah, and the facts are John Currie was your athletic director. Big Nick is a father who is trying to do right by his family. You know, whether you like him or you don't like him, like that, you know, he's trying to do right by his people. You know,
Yeah.
whereas John Currie was the AD for the university.
And you had an old school faction of Tennessee fans that still blame Curry for, stabbing Phillip in the back.
Yeah. I mean, he was not the popular AD choice when he got
No.
hired. And then the search obviously was completely off the rails, and you're all over the map on the search deal even before the Schiano thing. I think it's Curry, then I think it's Lane, and then I think the other two don't factor in. I mean, again, you're right. I mean, Big Nick doesn't work for the University of Tennessee. The other guys were employees at the university; they were your guys. So it's a different deal. All right, Nashville 615. At a variety of positions, but specifically defensive tackle and wide receiver, it appears there's been a lack of a plan. Can you give us a look into the hesitancy with getting players? I feel like we've addressed this with the defensive tackle multiple times. I think if Jamal Wallace were good to go and healthy, that changes what you need or what you may or may not need in a transfer portal at defensive line. And if Nathan Robinson had gone through spring and you felt better about that he was going to be able to stay healthy, that changes where you are on the defensive line. Austin, you just addressed the wide receiver stuff. Hindsight 2020, do you think Heupel and company wish they would have pushed harder on Nico to go or not go back in December and not be dealing with this in the spring part and the spring portal window?
Sure, but again, the family did not call until 2 hours, actually a little fraction less than 2 hours up against the window. So once the kid didn't go in at midnight, I mean, and he's back for spring. I mean, most people don't make the move in the spring window for this very reason.
Right.
Because of it just doesn't set the player up for success. Most kids that leave in spring are just like, I tried to give it a shot. I just need a new place. I'll just make the switch now. Most quarterbacks aren't making that move. Why could Tennessee not get any traction with any of the guys that had been established at the place? But for that very reason, I mean, nobody wants to make the move in April and May. So I just, I mean, sure, like in hindsight, you go back and, I'm sure they probably do wish that they had known and could have went and, had a little bit more established search for, this year's, one of this year's potential quarterbacks. But I mean, again, they didn't call 5 days before the portal window closed. They called it an hour and 45 minutes before.
Yeah, and then, at that point, you're going to do everything. I mean, you don't want to go through that at the end of the portal cycle because all the quarterbacks in that portal cycle had already
You're trying to get it to midnight. It's all you're trying to do. You're trying to get it to midnight,
and then go from there. And obviously, it didn't go the way people thought it was going to go, and certainly people at Tennessee thought it was going to go back in December. And so here's where we are. Pine, who are some of the true freshman quarterbacks that played at UT and how they compare to Gmac? Do you think Gmac, George McIntyre, has a legit shot at winning this quarterback competition?
For me, I'm going to compare him to Tyler Bray, just because like Bray, kind of tall, lanky, needed to put on weight.
That's Eric Age in there.
Yeah, there you go. That's another good one. Tall, lanky. I mean, George is 6'6", so 6'6", and right now currently 195 pounds. Still looks small. And that's kind of where Nico was a couple of years ago, right? I mean, look at Nico last year physically versus Nico in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl just, 10 months earlier. Looked like two different players, just the amount of weight that Nico put on last year to take, any kind of, hits and sustain. George is going to have to figure that out and figure it out in a hurry because, I mean, like, he's 1 or 2 snaps away, however you want to look at it, from potentially being in the game as the quarterback. So, he needs to continue to add weight over the next few months.
Yeah, I think to be legitimately in the competition, he's got to get sturdy.
205 at least.
Yeah, he's got to get there. I asked this question because he's got another part I'll get to. Pine does, but I asked this question because I thought of Eric Ainge too, Rob, and both of you remember the 2004 team doing different roles, but you remember it. I don't know that anybody truly understands how pretty remarkable it was to do what that team did offensively in 2004 when you look at what they were putting together on the field and playing with. Freshman quarterbacks, talented second-year receivers, correct? Does that sound familiar? Right? That was a very young offense. And that's Pine's second question here. Is this going to be one of the youngest offenses you can remember? I go back to that 2004 offense as one of the youngest I remember because of the quarterback situation, second-year receivers. I'm not saying this team's going to do that. I'm saying it's a credit to Randy Sanders, who never got the credit. That's an 04 team that won at Georgia. I know Georgia's different now than they were then. I get it. They beat Alabama. They beat Florida. Pretty remarkable, Rob, what that team did in 2004.
Yeah, went on the road at Georgia with a freshman quarterback. I mean, yeah, Georgia's not what they are now, but that was still an accomplishment for sure. I mean, think about them rotated quarterbacks. That was, in hindsight, that was crazy. That fall camp was nuts between him and Britt Schaefer.
Yeah, and I don't think Randy ever got the credit because of how it ended for Randy Sanders. Here's the OC, Austin. I don't think anybody ever gave him the credit that he deserved overall as a coordinator, but in particular that year for what they did. Now, you can go back and say, well, he screwed it up because he called a Hail Mary at the end of the first half like Georgia did in the SEC championship game, and it ended up getting their quarterback hurt, got Ainge hurt. But what they did to accomplish with that young of an offense was pretty crazy in 04.
Yeah, the one difference is you had Gerald Riggs and Cedric Houston, and you don't have an established running backs like you did in 2004. A week ago, Hubs compared the situation in '98. Now he's got him compared to a team that went to the SEC.
No.
So I mean, Hubs has got him bringing hardware home, or at least competing for it this year.
Yeah,
that's all I heard.
Okay, thanks. I love the inability to debate with you. I know you're just kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time too. SysVol wants to know the upcoming fall camp feels like one of the most battle-driven ones since Heupel's been here, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Are there any positions that aren't fully entrenched in a starter battle? Maybe tackle, maybe tight end. Is there any position on this team that you're going, man, their starting spot's not up for grabs on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, both tackle spots because Larry Johnson's gone. So Lance Hurd's your left tackle and David Sanders is your right tackle. And then after that, tight end, you're right. I mean, whether Kitzelman's back or not, I mean, he or Ethan Davis will start. So I mean, it doesn't, that's a lock. I would tell you the receivers are pretty settled. I think, and even if they bring somebody in here, I mean, I think the starters against Syracuse will be Brazel, Staley, and Matthews.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other part of this, Rob, that's going to be really interesting for Josh Heupel is how do you manage fall camp, right? Because you're trying to keep guys healthy, and when you have a veteran team, a lot of times you sort of back off some of the whole put the ball down play, scrimmage type deal. How do you manage this camp when you look at the youth that you have out there? I mean, to me, it's got to be one of the more physical camps, but you also are playing a power forward team in the opener, so you can't go into that game beat up, like you would if you were playing, a payday game that you could just get by with whatever with. I mean, I think Josh Heupel is going to earn some of that $9 million in managing this fall camp.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the thought that it'll be competitive and you got a lot of stuff up for grabs. But man, I think all coaches are dialing back the physicality in August. I mean, do you not feel like it? I mean, it feels so much different.
Yeah, I think you have to a large degree, but you're also, I mean, you've got an offensive line that's got zero chemistry. I mean, they've got, they don't have any. I mean, they try to find some this summer, but I mean, it's different than when you're playing. Those receivers need more than routes versus air or tag. I mean, they need to be. They got to work, they got to get pushed around and shoved around a little bit. I think offensively you need to hit a bunch, but I don't know that you could afford to hit a bunch. I think that's why there's an interesting line to walk. Whereas a year ago, we were talking about put this guy in bubble wrap, put this experienced guy in bubble wrap. I don't know that that's going to be the notion, maybe because of a lack of depth at some places you feel that way. But boy, it also feels like, man, you need to get some guys banged around a little bit because they don't have any experience.
And Hubbard, I mean, it's a broken record, and we talk, but I think the climate that we're in will lead to a lot of fall camps being like that because you don't have, you you're not cycling up that sophomore that's been in your program for 2 years and is now going to be a full-time starter that you've been building towards that for 2 years, because that kid transferred out after his freshman year.
Exactly.
And so I think every August is going to be more and more like this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be harder and harder to get your to truly get ready to play. I mean, I think early season games are going to be a different set of challenge, because you can't do what you did in fall.
More arguments for your OTAs in the summer.
Yeah, well, and back to your point of, hey, if you're going to pay these guys all the money, really, we can't work with a football with him in June. I mean, and again, that's part of the calendar change that's going to be pretty fast. Here's the other thing too. I mean, Tennessee is a team that has struggled to stay healthy, right? Austin, a lot of leg pulls, a lot of different soft tissue, muscle strains, that type of stuff. I mean, they need all the work. They were way too beat up in spring. They were way too many guys standing on the sideline. I mean, this team's got to get healthy, which is what Fly Fish 21 was asking about. I mean, I think you ask about the overall team's health. We just don't know, right? I mean, Kitzelman and McCoy are coming back, but what is Arian Carter? I mean, I'm assuming the shoulder is going to be fine, but he's coming off a procedure. You've got a bunch of guys coming off procedures. That's going to be a storyline with this team, is what does the health of them look like come August?
Yeah, Caleb Herring coming off the thing that he had late in the spring. And again, he should be fine. But I mean, you know how sometimes things are just slow to heal, and the timeline. Some kids will be back, and snap, and then some kids just linger. So everybody's different.
Yeah, certainly. NIL and Vol, 1980. Popular question, AP. I don't know how deep you can dive into this or not dive into it. Wait a minute. Let me go back here. I want to get this one because Volken asked this. I think the answer is we don't know, Rob. Volken also wanted to know, with Rice and Miles off the board, does the staff go straight to the overseas type players? Are there more guys in the portal that they're interested in?
I would get. I mean, I don't have the next index card to go to, but I wouldn't say it's straight up international. But I mean, I think you're probably drifting that way. And another thing is, it's not like they're just going to pop in a tape and start looking at the best kids in Spain. I mean, they've got an idea, but also those guys over there with the calendar, the good ones. I mean, the guy, the top guys that Tennessee is looking at, those guys are also wanting to get NBA feedback, and not just the guys Tennessee's looking at, but Gonzaga, everybody, and those guys are going to be waiting. They're on a different timetable than an American college kid. But I think that with the portal, I think Tennessee's still sifting through the portal. But if this if this goes on a couple more weeks, I think you'll see an international flavor.
Any truth to the rumor they're bringing in the cousins of Drazen Petrovic and Detlef Shrimp?
Have not heard that one, AP.
Are there cousins out there available, AP?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. But
now don't forget that Drazen, I can't remember his name, played high school basketball at Cleveland, played college basketball at Georgia. He's the guy reason Urosh was here. Tennessee's got a guy over there.
Yeah, they do have boots on the ground. They have some contact for information overseas for sure. NIL involved 1980. AP, how did things get so sideways with Nico and UT? You've already talked about why he didn't leave in December. Can you put a bow tie on why this thing got to here in any way? I don't think it's that simple, but is there a bow tie? He didn't come to practice on Friday.
Well, correct. I mean, I think that's how it got there with Tennessee. How it got there with Nico, I mean, Tennessee never was going to go up to the $4 million number that they wanted. And, I think it's as simple as that. And so, I think, if you read the ESPN article, I think, which is, I think a good kind of overview. I mean, it's a he said, she said, a lot of sources here and there. But, when you go back to it, when they didn't give him the money in December, and then I think when they tried again in February and that didn't happen, I think that's why you saw the source about the player that Nico told going off the field on Wednesday. I think that they were leaving. I just think that Pete's stuff expedited the decision, which probably hurt Nico in the grand scheme of things. If he goes to practice on Friday and he goes to the Orange and White game on Saturday and announces on Wednesday he's leaving, was the market for Nico better than what it ended up being? I probably think so.
Well, and he could have done that regardless of the article. I mean, they could have. They already had their spin out in the CBS
Correct.
story that everything was fine. Just write it out 2 more practices.
They were practices, and I think it changes drastically for him. It was a decision that was not a very good decision.
Yeah, I mean, that's of all the things I've covered in a while, that's one of the more baffling things from a decision standpoint that just doesn't make any sense. The Friday practice was about 90 minutes. It was a light little deal. He wasn't going to play a bunch of snaps in the orange and white game anyway. Just roll through it and then deal with it on Sunday. It just didn't help you by going. I mean, it was just a mistake. I don't any other way to say it. They just
this is
shouldn't have done it.
It's a million times bigger deal and a million times more magnified. But I mean, same kind of thing that happened with Cam Carr back in December when you have parents and amateurs, making decisions like at this level. I mean, dumb stuff happens.
You can't be emotional and irrational in decision making when it comes to that stuff.
You need to have a professional.
We've all done it in our life. Every one of us, all 3 of us right here, have made emotional and rational decisions.
It didn't cost you $2.5 million.
There you go. It cost me not getting to eat dinner where I want to eat dinner or something like that. It cost me $2 million.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, and the emotions the emotions was in that decision was very, very costly for sure. All right, Akins Vol VFL 24. Will Tennessee get a tackle with Larry Johnson leaving, or do you think they're going to write it out there? Will Tennessee look at some guys they missed in high school like Nycar and Hakeem Williams?
I don't think they'll add an offensive tackle. And Nycar, I could see them bringing him in. I could see them absolutely bringing him in. So, we'll see if that happens again. I think that's, I'm not heard anything on the other one. Nycar, there's been a little chatter. Nothing, no visit scheduled as of now, but I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, when you're just looking to find a body, and there's not a ton of options out there at this point. I think ideally, though, Austin, your preference would be to get a guy with some experience if you could. I just don't know that that's realistic, right? In that room, I mean, don't you want a guy that's got some experience versus a room that's full of 7 guys who don't have experience?
Correct, and just adding another inexperienced guy. Right. Yeah, I agree with you.
But now, is that possible? That's a whole different thing.
The problem is, as receivers, it's a diva position. They all want to get paid like divas, and so how much is Tennessee willing to pay for a kid that is someone who can help you but may not be your starter?
Yeah, true. All right, last question here, Smokey Gray. How bad do you miss the good old days of recruiting when guys like Forrest Davis and Countdown to Signing Day were the gold standard? I vividly remember them discussing how the Vols had legitimate shots at Cosey Coleman, Jamal Lewis, and Deon Grant. Am I a dinosaur for wanting those days back?
No, heck, man, that was the era I grew up in. Watching Jamie Newberg and all those, and they'd put that old high school tape on. You'd see Jabari Davis trucking down the sidelines, and those were much simpler times. But guess what, Hubs? For a guy, for at least for you and I, we love to watch Andy Griffith. The world was a much better place back then too. So
it's very different.
Take me heck, you don't even have to take me back to Andy Griffith. Just take me back to Saved by the Bell.
Do you know what though? Jabari Davis, which is he was getting recruited right now.
Yes, what now?
It's Jabari Davis, which is he was getting recruited right now instead of 25 years ago.
He would have a cigar NIL deal.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Austin, and I know we're about out of time here, but you talked about this, I think, in a previous podcast, talking with some of those guys on the sideline at the orange and white game, and they would like to have gotten paid, right? They certainly would have liked to have gotten paid, but I think some of those guys view it as what it's become is negating some of the true college experience that some guys have. Now, at the end of the day, everybody's going to take the money, right? You want money, okay? But I think that their feeling is the way it is now, some guys are missing out on what some of the joys of the college experience in their minds were.
Well, I mean, how do you put this? Like, it's going to be interesting to see how schools handle players who left, right? Like Tyler Barron played his whole career here, and then for 8 months went to Miami, with a detour to Louisville, and stopped a short stop in Ole Miss. But I mean, is he going to be coming back to orange and white games? Because I mean, if he plays at Tennessee that final year, absolutely. But it makes it a little different, right? I mean, if he calls and says, "Hey, I'm a former player, I want to come," like, are they letting him come? I would say they would, because I mean, what's the difference between that and somebody who never played and left after his junior year because he wasn't playing and just got out of football? I mean, I don't know. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle a lot of those former players with stuff, because you're right. I mean, all those guys talked about the experience and, and this is their school. And now all of a sudden you got guys with multiple schools.
Yeah, you do. And listen, life changes. It doesn't stay the same. Do I miss January? Do I miss the chaos of January for 4 weeks? Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways I do. Guys had 5 visits in 5 weeks and make a decision, and that was it. I mean, you also didn't cover it until November. You didn't start figuring out who guys were until October, November. And now it's a year-round business, and it's a year-round process for guys that happened, and that's just part of the growing part of it. So there's things I miss about it. There's things that, there's more talk about it year-round, and it's just everything changes. But the problem with college football for fans right now is the changes, Rob, have been so dramatic in college athletics that it's not about just getting your hands around whatever it is. They've really messed with the core of what you've kind of valued, which is what you were talking about off the top. And that's the challenge college athletics has in the coming couple of years here, to make sure they don't erode away a fan base because of the chaos that they've allowed to happen due to a lack of leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's coming. I mean, maybe it's just an older generation, but there's a large percentage of the older generation that are soured, and older generation that write big checks are soured. I mean, not everybody. Some are fine. It's new. Let's get along. Others, but I mean, you guys know them too. You have friends, family, whatever. I mean, people feel differently about it now.
Yeah, they certainly do. I mean, Tennessee's going to sell out Neyland Stadium again. Austin, as you mentioned, the product is good. It's the side parts of the product. It's the things other than the 12 Saturdays, in the regular season that is making it tough on fans right now. And I think ADs, administrators, decision makers, commissioners, all those people better be mindful of those things, because, it can close. The window can close on you in a hurry if you're not on top of stuff. I mean, it really can.
Well, look how it affected. I mean, when the baseball had their lockout in '94, look how it affected them and how long it took them to get back. And it took the steroids.
They may not even be back.
I don't think they are back. I'm not.
Well, they got a huge chunk back with McGuire and Sosa, right? They used the steroids and the home run chase to catch Roger Maris as a way to get everybody kind of engaged. People are talking about all that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it can go that way in a hurry. And what it's becoming is becoming seasonal. That's the way I look at it. Is, I'm gonna be there in the fall, but we'll see who's on our team. When we get there, I'm not gonna worry about putting all this stuff in between.
I mean, I don't think it's there yet. But if it's gonna be like, if I'm gonna watch a bunch of greedy, millionaires play, I'm gonna watch a better product. I'm going to watch true, 26-year-old professionals.
Yeah, I mean, I think the danger of it is that you don't have anybody that you watch develop. One of the joys of college is you watch a guy from his freshman year through his junior year, and how much that guy grows, and you kind of get to know. I mean, one of the fascinations with his basketball team, Rob, was Meshack and Ziegler, because you knew them for such a long period of time. It doesn't feel like you're going to have as many opportunities for that to be the case in college athletics. There'll be some, but not what you've had in the past. And that's the hard part for fans.
And Hubbard, there couldn't be a greater example or two bigger, opposites than Nico and Zakai. I mean, think about that. I mean, how they arrived here with the fan. I mean, Zakai came with no fanfare. Nobody knew who he was. Nico was, the cover boy of everything. Now Zakai can come back in 25 years and not buy a meal in this town. And Nico comes back in 25 years and people are going to throw rocks at his car.
Yep. It's a different world for sure. Lots of things to discuss. Plenty of topics like that to go through the off season here, but plenty of questions to answer, and we appreciate you sending us all the questions in that you did this week. We'll be back with the podcast on Tuesday next week as well. Plenty of coverage at Volquest for baseball, basketball portal, continue with the football portal as well. Plenty of things to discuss, and we'll continue that. Coaches are on the road and recruiting. We'll have details about that as well. Lots of things going on as we roll out of the month of April into the month of May. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.